Have you ever played emotional chess in a relationship, only to realize, your partner wasn't playing a game at all?
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
Right. It's devastating.
Yeah.
And today, we are dissecting this brilliant, really devastating collision of expectations. We're diving deep into Munshi Premchand's classic story, Vinod, from his Mansarovar collection.
Yeah, it's such a complex text.
It really is. So if you love unraveling the psychology behind complex literary relationships, well, you are in the right place. And if you're joining us from the Simplified Summary YouTube channel, I humbly ask that you hit that subscribe button, like this video, and drop a valuable comment down below to help our community grow.
We really rely on your insights to keep these deep dives going, so it makes a massive difference for the channel.
Exactly. And today's text, it just offers this incredible landscape for discussion.
It does, because what Premchand doesn't denote, it isn't just telling a story about a mismatched couple. He basically conducts this forensic examination of what happens when radical progressive ideals crash headfirst into traditional possessive concepts of love.
Which is just a recipe for disaster.
Completely.
So let's jump straight into the architecture of how Premchand delivers this psychological thriller. Because we don't get an omniscient narrator here.
Right, no bird's eye view.
Exactly. The entire narrative is filtered through a series of intimate letters written by Padma to her friend Chanda.
Which is such a specific choice.
It is. Why do you think Premchand chose this specific epistolary format for a story about a marital breakdown?
Well, it is a deliberate mechanism to trap the reader, honestly. By confining us entirely to Padma's letters, Premchand forces us into a very claustrophobic, subjective space.
Like we're stuck in our head.
Exactly. We only ever see Vinod through the distorted, increasingly paranoid lens of Padma's insecurities.
Wow.
Yeah, we feel her awe, her sudden spikes of jealousy, and her mounting panic in real time.
Because we don't know what he's actually thinking.
Right. If we had an objective narrator explaining Vinod's inner thoughts from the beginning, the tension would just evaporate. We are meant to be just as blind to his internal reality as she is.
Okay, that makes so much sense. I want to focus on the foundation of their disconnect, which really stems from their drastically different worldviews.
The clash of paradigms. Yeah.
Right, because we know Padma is deeply rooted in traditional mindsets regarding marriage. But Vinod represents a very specific disruption in early 20th century Indian literature.
He really does.
He has just returned from England with a DPhil, and he's dreaming of traveling to Asia, to China. He isn't just a smart guy. He represents an entirely different sociological paradigm.
And that historical context is crucial here. In the literature of this era, the England returned scholar often functions as a catalyst for domestic tension.
Because they bring back all these new ideas.
Exactly. Going to England for a DPhil meant absorbing Western liberalism, individualism, and romantic ideals that completely contrasted with the communal, duty-bound structure of traditional Indian domestic life.
So he's operating on a totally different wavelength.
Entirely. Vinod comes back viewing the world and human connection through a lens of expansive intellectual freedom. He doesn't want to conquer the world, He wants to observe it without borders.
But okay, let me push back on Vinod's supposed enlightenment for a second.
Sure, go for it.
Because it is very easy to read his desire to exist without conventional boundaries as this noble philosophical stance.
Right.
But isn't his individualism also just a highly convenient way to remain emotionally aloof? Like he gets to avoid the messy, demanding work of actually being a partner by hiding behind this grand vision of universal appreciation.
Oh, that is the central friction of his character. You are identifying the exact blind spot that makes his philosophy so dangerous in practice.
No, because it sounds great on paper, but
in reality, it's deeply alienating. Vinod views love as a foundation from which to appreciate the entire world. To him, love is like an open source network.
Okay, an open source network, I like that.
Right, so adding more connections, like his appreciation for their poet neighbor, Kusum. It doesn't diminish the original network. In his mind, it enriches the whole system.
While Padma's version of love operates like a closed-circuit security system.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah, the moment any outside signal enters the network, the alarms start blaring.
Absolutely blare.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it's like Padma has this flawless diamond of a relationship, but she's obsessing over a tiny speck of dust in the room. When Vinod simply smiles at Kusum or praises her poetry, Padma's system registers a catastrophic breach.
A total threat to her existence.
Right. She wants to be the absolute center of his universe. She doesn't just want Vinod to love her. She requires him to be entirely blind to the beauty or intellect of anyone else.
And this brings us to the psychology of jealousy as a metric for love. Padma measures the validity of Vinod's devotion inversely by his attention to others.
So the less he looks at others, the more he loves her.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture and look at the mechanics of her traditional worldview, marriage is fundamentally a transaction of exclusivity.
Right.
To her, ownership equals safety. When she admits to Chanda that she wants Kusum's eyes to lose their light.
Ugh, this part is so dark.
It is. It's a terrifyingly visceral admission. She feels her entire sense of security is threatened by Vinod's basic capacity to recognize external beauty.
It is a phenomenal depiction of how we sabotage our own happiness. I mean, she has this brilliant, fascinating husband, but she becomes completely obsessed with controlling his gaze.
She misses the forest for the trees.
Exactly. But the irony here is that while Padma is busy policing his attention, Vinod is actively constructing a massive deception of his own.
Oh, the Mussoorie trip.
Yes. Let's look at the Mussoorie honeymoon, because this is where the ideological clash becomes an economic one.
The honeymoon in Mussoorie is a fascinating study in performative romance.
It really is.
This is where Padma discovers the cracks in the facade, because the luxurious car is borrowed, the beautiful furniture is rented.
Wait, literally everything is rented.
Pretty much. Vinod is actively dodging questions about his finances, essentially faking a level of wealth he just does not possess.
I find this sequence so revealing, because Padma's reaction is entirely misunderstood by Vinod.
He completely misreads her.
Right. When she realizes the wealth is an illusion, she isn't furious about the prospect of poverty. She actually notes she would be fine being poor.
Which is very telling about her character.
Yeah, what enrages her is the deception. By hiding his financial reality, he is shutting her out of a true, equal partnership.
He's isolating her.
Exactly. He is treating her like a guest in his life rather than a co-pilot.
And it is a tragic miscalculation on Vinod's part. It really highlights the immense societal pressure placed on men to perform as providers.
Even for someone as progressive as him.
Precisely. Despite all of his progressive, radical, Western-educated ideals, Vinod still falls into the oldest traditional trap in the book.
He thinks he has to buy her love.
Yeah. He believes he must perform wealth and stability to be deemed worthy of Padma's love. He is trying to construct the fairy tale he assumes she requires.
But the mechanics of that construction, the
Yeah.
secrecy and the lies, plant the seeds of profound distrust.
Exactly. The lie does more damage than poverty ever could.
I think this is a perfect moment to bridge this text to our listeners today. Because how often do we see this exact dynamic playing out in the modern era?
Oh, all the time on social media.
Right. Think about couples who go into massive debt to curate a perfect aesthetic lifestyle for Instagram.
It's the modern Mussoorie honeymoon.
It really is. They are so focused on performing the markers of a successful relationship for the outside world, or even for each other, that they completely bypass authentic intimacy. Vinod was basically doing the 1930s equivalent of renting a sports car for a photo shoot.
That is a highly accurate parallel, and the consequence is identical isolation.
Because he's not letting her in.
Right. Because he won't be vulnerable about his struggles, Padma feels disconnected. She feels she's losing her grip on who he really is.
And when people feel powerless and disconnected in a relationship, they often resort to manufacturing conflict just to force a genuine interaction.
Which is exactly what she does next.
Yeah, which brings us to the most uncomfortable, toxic sequence in the entire story, the weaponization of the male gaze at the cinema.
Oh, this scene is so painful to read.
It is. Padma deliberately uses the Bengali man, Bhuvan, to set a psychological trap for Vinod.
And the choice of a Bengali man here isn't accidental either.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
Well, in the cultural context of the time, the Bengali gentleman was often stereotyped in literature as highly cultured, articulate, and perhaps a bit more romantic or emotionally expressive.
So basically the exact opposite of Vinod.
Right. He's a subtle foil to Vinod's specific brand of detached stoic intellect. So Padma uses Bhuvan to throw a match into what she assumes is a room full of gasoline.
She flirts openly, ignores Vinod, and entertains Bhuvan's offers, entirely expecting an explosion.
She wants him to lose his mind.
Here's where it gets really interesting. She wants territorial aggression. She wants Vinod to step in, cause a scene, and claim her.
But the strategy backfires spectacularly.
Because Vinod doesn't react at all. He remains completely stoic and serene. Now, from a psychological standpoint, Why does Vinod's calmness infuriate Padma more than a public screaming match ever could?
Because in Padma's closed-circuit system of love, anger equals care.
Wow. Anger equals care.
Yeah, if Vinod gets angry, it proves she holds power over his emotional state.
Yeah.
It validates her as valuable property that he is willing to defend against a rival.
So, by doing nothing, he's depriving her of that proof.
Exactly. His stoicism completely deprives her of that validation. To a mind that equates possession with love, an absence of jealousy doesn't look like enlightened respect. It looks like pure, devastating apathy.
It feels like he just doesn't care.
Right. She interprets his silence as, if you won't fight for me, you must not care if I leave.
Let's pause there, because I really struggle with Vinod in this scene.
I don't blame you.
I mean, the text frames him as this highly sensitive, philosophical soul who refuses to treat his wife as property. But isn't his silence actually a massive failure of emotional availability?
It absolutely is.
He watches his wife spiral into desperate, attention-seeking behavior, and instead of asking her why she is hurting, he just retreats into his intellect. He uses his philosophy as a shield to avoid a messy human confrontation.
That is a very sharp critique, and it cuts to the core of Premchand's genius.
Because Premchand isn't saying Vinod is perfect here.
No, not at all. Premchand isn't presenting Vinod's philosophy as flawless. He is showing how intellectual rigidity can be just as destructive as traditional jealousy.
They're both toxic in their own ways.
Exactly. Vinod fundamentally misreads the situation. He looks at Padma flirting with Bhuvan and doesn't see a woman begging for reassurance.
What does he see?
Through his lens of absolute freedom, he sees a woman who is genuinely finding joy elsewhere, a woman who perhaps wants to be free of him.
Oh, that is tragic.
Yeah.
And that misinterpretation sets the stage for the disastrous dinner party.
Where things really come to a head.
Yeah, because her cinema stunt didn't work. So Padma pushes the envelope by inviting Bhuvan to their home for dinner. And during this dinner, Vinod finally articulates his radical manifesto on marriage.
He just lays all his cards on the table.
He really does. He states that marriage exists solely for mutual self-development. If love fades, the contract is meaningless.
Which is a very radical thought for the time.
Very. He advocates for unbridled freedom, refusing to view attraction to others as a sin. He completely rejects the idea of treating a spouse as property.
Now, this raises an important question. Think about how hearing those words must have felt for Padma. It must have been deeply alienating.
It probably confirmed all her worst fears.
Exactly. Vinod thinks he is offering her the ultimate gift-enlightened, unchained freedom. He is telling her that his love is not a cage.
But Padma doesn't want to fly.
No, she doesn't.
She wants the cage, provided the bars are made of Vinod's fierce, exclusive desire for her. They are speaking two entirely incompatible languages of love.
That's the core issue. He speaks the language of intellectual liberation, and she speaks the language of emotional possession.
This clash of vocabularies leads to the ultimate tragic consequence of the story.
The disappearance.
Right. Padma wakes up to find Vinod gone, and he's left her this heartbreaking letter. He doesn't leave in anger, he leaves in quiet devastation.
It's a very self-sacrificing departure.
Yeah, he hands over his bank accounts, ensures her financial security, and vanishes, stating he is stepping out of her way so she can be free.
And that letter shatters Padma's entire reality. It completely destroys her operating illusion.
Because she thought he didn't care.
Exactly.
Yep.
She believed his lack of jealousy meant a lack of care. The letter proves that his extreme sensitivity, which he so carefully hid beneath his stoic exterior, was profoundly wounded.
He was hurting the whole time.
Yes. He cared so deeply that he was willing to obliterate his own presence in her life to ensure she wasn't bound to a man who made her unhappy.
But this is where I find Vinod's actions incredibly frustrating, perhaps even cowardly.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, he decides to be a martyr for her freedom without ever actually asking if she wanted to be freed.
Right, he doesn't communicate.
He makes a unilateral decision to abandon the marriage based on an assumption. He runs away to Bombay and takes poison.
It's extreme.
It is. He attempts suicide rather than sit down and have one excruciatingly honest conversation with his wife about why she was flirting with another man.
Your frustration is entirely justified, and it highlights the paradox of extreme sensitivity.
How so?
Well, Kusum, the poet neighbor who ends up saving his life and bringing him back, She diagnoses Vinod perfectly when she scolds Padma.
Oh, right, because she brings him back home.
Yes, and she explains that Vinod operates entirely without the traditional cynicisms or societal shock absorbers that most people use to navigate conflict.
So he just feels everything at 100%.
Exactly. He is guided purely by a raw, unprotected emotional core. When that core was breached by what he perceived as Padma's rejection, he lacked the practical tools to negotiate the conflict.
His philosophy failed him.
His intellect could conceptualize universal love, but it couldn't handle interpersonal conflict.
It is a stunning realization for Padma. All this time, she thought she was manipulating a cold, unfeeling intellectual, only to discover she was playing games with a man whose heart was practically made of glass.
It shatters her whole perspective.
And her initial reaction to his disappearance is so telling. Before she finds out about Bombay, she contemplates publishing a fake news story saying she is dying, just to trick him into coming back.
Even in her deepest grief, her default instinct is manipulation.
Right, she doesn't just think, I'll find him and tell him the truth.
No, she doesn't immediately think of honest communication. She thinks of how to manufacture a scenario to force his return.
The vicious cycle.
It shows how deeply entrenched these behavioral loops are. Premchand is demonstrating that you cannot cure a disease of deception with more deception.
Which brings us to the profound underlying lesson of Vinod.
The ultimate takeaway.
Yeah, through this near tragedy, the text strips away all the performative layers of romance. It shows us that true love isn't about the superficial markers we so often rely on.
It's not about the stuff.
Right. It isn't about the rented Mussoorie furniture, or the ability to provoke a jealous rage at a cinema, or even the grand, sweeping declarations of philosophical freedom.
Because none of that is real intimacy. True connection requires the grueling, unglamorous work of translating your feelings into a language your partner can actually understand.
You have to do the work.
Yeah, Padma tried to force Vinod into the mold of a traditional, possessive husband, completely disrespecting his core nature.
And Vinod did the exact same thing to her.
Exactly. He tried to force Padma into the mold of an enlightened, detached intellectual, completely ignoring her need for secure attachment. Neither of them bothered to learn the other's vocabulary until the relationship was literally on life support.
And this is exactly why this story from the 1930s feels like it could have been written yesterday.
Human nature doesn't really change.
It really doesn't. So if you are listening to this right now, think about the dynamics in your own life. How often do we set silent traps for the people we care about?
We do it all the time.
We say, I'm fine, when we are actually furious,
Right.
waiting to see if they care enough to push past the lie.
Or we pick fights just to feel seen.
Exactly.
Yep.
We use silence or jealousy or withdrawal as metrics to test their devotion, rather than just offering the vulnerability of saying, I feel insecure and I need reassurance.
The story serves as a massive warning against assuming you know the internal architecture of your partner's mind.
Because you don't.
No, you don't. Vinod assumed Padma wanted freedom. Padma assumed Vinod felt nothing. Both assumptions nearly resulted in a tragic loss of life.
It almost cost them everything.
And the epistolary format we discussed earlier is the perfect metaphor for this. We are all trapped in the subjective letters of our own minds, and unless we explicitly communicate our reality, our partners are left guessing in the dark.
The X-ray machine for human relationships is always going to be murky. We cannot see the exact fractures in our partner's ego or the specific way they process fear or love.
You can't read minds.
Right. We have to dismantle the closed-circuit security systems and the defensive philosophies, and we have to just talk to each other.
It really comes down to that.
So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you were to strip away all the societal expectations from your own relationships right now, remove the performative acts on social media, remove the little tests of jealousy, and remove the philosophical ideals you use to protect yourself, what is actually left holding it all together?
That is a tough question.
Is the foundation built on true, vulnerable connection? Or is it just a facade of habit, expectation, and rented furniture?
Wow. Rented furniture, that's a great way to put it.
Thank you so much for joining us for this intense exploration of Munshi Premchand's Vinod. For everyone watching on the Simplified Summary YouTube channel, please remember to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment below.
We would love to read your perspective. Do you sympathize more with Padma's desperate need for traditional reassurance or Vinod's fragile desire for absolute intellectual freedom?
Let us know, and we will catch you in the next deep dive.